60 Minutes with Angela starts right now.
Right, so it was in May this year, 2022, I sat down for a 60-minute conversation with the Honourable Minister for Aviation, Hadi Sirika. In that interview, he made a lot of assertions and he prepared Nigerians for the coming of a second national airline. That was in May. Now, today it looks like the airline is taking off. We have been told that the Ethiopian Airline will be running that new airline. Nigeria Air is what we've called it here in the country. But my guest today is totally against Nigeria setting up another airline. And even if we are going to be setting up an airline, he thinks that we shouldn't be giving it to another airline like Ethiopian Air, for instance, to run it. Well, that's the focus of our discussion today. He's a retired aviation and UK immigration law practitioner and co-owner of Nigeria AirTips. Anthony OMOKHODION joins me on the program today. Thank you for coming on the program with me, Anthony OMOKHODION, my learned colleague, as I like to call you. What exactly is Nigeria AirTips about?
Okay, Nigeria AirTips is a journal. It's an online journal. You'll find us on Facebook and on Twitter. And basically, we're two of us who own it, and we're into the aviation space. Right. It's an online publication.
Okay, it gives information about aviation, travel, and all sorts of things.
Exactly.
So, all right, so I just wanted to clear that out of the way. So what is your general reaction, to that conversation I had with the minister? He made a lot of assertions which we will go through one by one, but I just wanted your general overview of that conversation.
Well, put very simply, I'm not against a national carrier. I don't think we need it. I think we have other methodologies for achieving the same effects.
Yes. How
the partnership with Ethiopian Airlines came about and why Ethiopians is more of my concern.
Right.
That is a no-no.
That is a no-no. Okay, so we'll get to that first. But, let's start from the interview point itself. The minister said that the focus of the Buhari administration is safety and security. And I'm quoting him now. He says, those are things that the passenger does not see. It's not air conditioners, it's not escalators or conveyor belts. They're not physical things. But safety and security are the focus of this administration, and to his credit, he says there haven't been too many incidents, at least since Buhari came in. Do you agree with him on that point?
Well, yes, there haven't been, if any, incidents. But I don't agree that escalators and air conditioners are not part of the big deal. And let me just say this here now.
Yes.
Nigeria is at the center of the world. Bring out a map, look at the position of Nigeria to America, to the Far East, to the UK, to South Africa. We're at the center of the world. So if we want to have a thriving airline,
yes,
we should be positioned like in Amsterdam or in London, in Dubai, to have international passengers transiting through Nigeria. Right. So the whole escalator issue, the whole air conditioning issue is part of the package. Yes, the planes are not falling out of the sky. But there's a bigger picture, and we should be looking at it.
We should be looking at that. He says that, you know, sometimes when you go to council, contending factors. For instance, he says, I want new air conditioning, but the health minister is talking about an outbreak of cholera in a state in the country, and that will take priority. He says, if we look at it from that point of view, then we'll realize that if there's any money at all to be spent, it should be expended on security and safety first, before thinking of the aesthetics that you talk about.
I don't know whether aesthetics is the right word. In fact, I disagree. If you come out of an aircraft after a 6-hour flight, you've been in an air-conditioned aircraft with 400 people. If you're going to have a cholera outbreak, that will be a single point of attack. You then come into a building in a hot country with no windows and no ventilation, and you tell me no aesthetics? I'm sorry, I don't agree.
His next point was that Zaria is now an Africa Center of Excellence declared by ICAO, that's International Civil Aviation Organization. I wanted you to listen to him and then react to that, because I'm thinking surely if ICAO is declaring Zaria an Africa Center of Excellence, that is surely a good thing. But let's listen to him and then we'll take your reaction.
In Zaria, when President Buhari came, or since his coming in 2015 till date, Zaria has become International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, Africa Center of Excellence. We have the highest number of trained instructors by ICAO in the entire world. We have the highest number of ICAO courses delivered by Zaria in the entire world. We have in Zaria put simulators, like 737 simulator is a $21 million equipment is installed in Zaria. We've installed the best fire and smoke simulator in Zaria, 5.2 billion. In Zaria, we bought and ordered for 20 training aircraft. In areas of safety, for example, in same Zaria, we procured an aircraft that is used to calibrate the equipment that you have at various airports to ensure they are working in the correct order and correct sense. So these are things that passengers don't see and don't know.
And your reaction to what the minister just said about Zaria?
I will agree with the minister. He's done very well concerning Zaria.
He's done very well concerning Zaria. All right, we'll move to the next point he made about certification. He said certification has been finally achieved. None has been done since the amalgamation. I want you to listen to that and then take your reaction as well.
No government was able to certify any single airport.
Why not?
And the Buhari administration came and was certify Abuja and Lagos. Why not? Because they have not put in their energy and focus and dedication and to do it. And we came as serious-minded people and we did it. We are now on our way to certifying Kano, Port Harcourt, and Enugu, and we will achieve it before the end of this administration. And that is the first time any government in the history of Nigeria from amalgamation in 1914 that did it.
And your response to his point on the certification?
Again, no arguments.
No arguments on that?
Yes.
He's on point.
He's on point.
Were you surprised that we hadn't had certification since amalgamation?
Well, I would say that if we hadn't had,
yes,
and we've been able to use the airports, then having the certification becomes, without being uncharitable to Mr. Minister, a moot point. But we have it, great.
Great point. All right. So now we come to the crux of the matter now, this Nigeria Air. I asked him that, knowing what we know about how the former Nigeria Airways ended up, you know, why do we at this time need a new airline? And I want you to hear my question and his answer. When we know now that people were forcefully retired, you know, the airline was liquidated, assets were sold, why then are we trying to have a new national airline?
So we're trying to have a new national airline different from the other one. The other one was a government enterprise. So the government that established it like a bus service. So government decided to do that at that time. Why? Because one of the importance of civil aviation, air transportation, to the economy of Nigeria. Because we are 200 million people at the center of Africa, equidistant from all location.
Yes.
And more because in the past there has not been any successful airline out of Nigeria that is providing this service. 95% of all international airlines that are operating within Nigeria are non-Africans. Not even non-Nigerian, they are non-Africans. And we have the market. So why do we allow somebody to come and take our market?
Yes.
Take our employment? So government is trying to set up this airline, which is private sector, for Nigerian private entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Maybe with some foreign, also international partners, to set up a robust Nigerian airline that will be able to provide the service.
So Mr. Sirika made a distinction between Nigeria Airways and Nigeria Air. What did you make of his explanation? Did it make rational sense to you?
Yes, in gist, yes. Nigeria Airways belong to the federal government of Nigeria. The idea of Nigeria Air is that it should belong to private individuals.
Yes.
But that's on the surface. We need to look at it properly.
Right.
Nigeria Airways is a baby of the 1960s. And I don't think that in the 1960s we could have made it a privatized airline because at that time,
yes,
the whole concept of privatization for airlines did not exist. Even the British Airways they referred to at the time was not privatized.
Yes.
That didn't happen maybe in the 80s. Now, because Nigeria Airways was a government baby, it therefore was subject to the whims and caprices of the federal government of Nigeria. And we saw that a lot in the mid-70s,
yes,
when an aircraft can be withdrawn from service,
yes,
and sent to carry the president,
yes,
to another country for a state conference.
Yes.
And that impacted on the operations.
I don't understand what you mean by that. An aircraft supposed to carry 200 passengers to London.
Yes.
And then they tell the plane, you can't go because the president needs you.
So you did understand, exactly.
And what would happen to the passengers?
Well, the impact of that on the operations of Nigeria was that it ran out of capacity. And that's why you would have things like short booking, overbooking, no space, no flight cancellations, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
Creating a backlog, creating enmity, creating very unhappy passengers. The Nigeria is also, because it was a government baby, was influenced in things like recruitment, where you are recruited from the national character, as
yes,
we call it.
Yes.
If in truth the national character was respected, and therefore it wasn't always the best man for the best job.
They weren't professional.
Nigeria Airways as an airline was a fantastic airline. I don't think anybody can take that away from Nigeria Airways. The engineers and the pilots were top notch. There's no arguing about it. They were probably the best in the world.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that glibly.
Yes.
But the operations of the airline were impacted. Not only that, some aircraft we had were bought by the federal government for Nigeria Airways and were probably not the right aircraft for the airline. The DC-10 is a good example.
Yes.
I can go on. That's the trouble with Nigeria Airways. So it's that they are trying to move away from, to say, let Nigerians own an airline. But like I said, the time for private ownership is now, not then.
Yes.
And the management of the airline will be more along international standards, if I may put it that way.
Right.
And so that's the distinction between Nigeria Airways and private investors.
Yeah. Okay. So why don't you want Ethiopia to run it?
Very good question. Mr. Minister in that interview has said, we have the best this, we have the best that, we have the manpower.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. So if we have that, why are we asking the Ethiopians to run it?
Okay, let me answer that as if I'm the minister.
Yes.
We know how Ethiopia Air is regarded today in the aviation world. Having just done the IATA exams myself, Ethiopia Air comes highly recommended, very professional in their outlook and in their service and in their capacity. So why not?
Ethiopian Air, there's a very simple policy in Ethiopia. Don't touch the airline as a government. So the government don't put their finger in Ethiopian Airlines.
Hence,
they're as great as we say they are. They don't have two heads. They didn't go to any schools different from us in management, in technical, in whatever. They don't have anything we don't have. Nigeria was ranking ahead of Ethiopian Airlines in the days. There's nothing the Ethiopians have to give us that we're not capable of producing.
By ourselves.
So why Ethiopian Air? Why? It's such an issue for me.
Okay, so wait. We're bringing in Ethiopian Air because we probably think that if we don't, we will have a system that our big men will corrupt again. You know, what if that's the reason why?
Well, then the problem is not Nigeria. Are you with me?
Yes.
And I say it up front. It's
Yeah.
not an Ethiopian problem. Ethiopians are not at fault here.
Yes.
The problem is ours. So when I say it's not a Nigerian problem, it actually is a Nigerian problem from two sides of the stick. Are we able to run a national airline without interference? Is the Nigerian government the will the minister is talking about? Does it exist to say, do you know what? We do believe that we need an airline. We do believe that we are positioned to take its places. We will not touch this airline. We will not involve ourselves in it. Is it able to write a law to ensure that the federal government of Nigeria don't touch the airline? Is it able to say, all right, we're going to create Nigerian Airways, but the shares in the company, instead of 3 or 4 people, let's spread it wider and let them choose their management. Let them choose the airline they want to partner with.
Yes.
Rather than Ethiopian being imposed, and the terms of that imposition are murky. We're not sure.
They're not clear.
No. How long is it for? What are they bringing in? What are they in money, in aircraft, in technical expertise? What are we doing?
Training?
Yes. What are we doing to the Ethiopian brand when we give them Nigeria? Remove Nigeria. When we give the Ethiopians Nigeria, what are we doing to their brand vis-a-vis our brand?
Yes.
The issues are so big that Ethiopia has just got to be the wrong answer.
Join us again after the break. Welcome back. Okay, I hear you. There's nothing they're doing that we can't do.
Exactly.
But one of the points that he made was that 95% of airlines operating in Nigeria are non-African. So could we excuse that and say, well, Ethiopia Air is better to have than, say, a Lufthansa or a British Airways? You know, at least we're sticking with our African brothers rather than going outside Africa.
So my question would be why?
Okay.
Don't we have Nigerian carriers that can do the same?
Like AirTips.
Like AirTips, like Arik Air. Why are those 2 airlines? I'm not even going to talk about other carriers like Max Air and
Yes.
Azman.
Yes.
I'm not even going to mention a plethora of airlines out there that can be given wings. Why are we not able to use our capacity to conquer the skies?
How would that work? I interviewed the president of the Aviation Roundtable before, Mr. Gabriel Olowo, and he differentiated that some aircraft carry the flag and some are like, you know, representative of the government. So how would it work to co-opt an existing airline, for instance, to be a national airline?
Well, let's look at the case in America. They don't have a national carrier. But the aircraft that they send here, or the airlines they send here, carry their flag. You just decide, look, let's take a simple example. Let's divide the world into 4 zones.
Right.
North, south, east, west. Give one carrier one route, and let him carry our flag there. So, if you are going to give Air Peace the United States or Dubai, give another carrier UK or Europe.
Yes.
And give yet another carrier
Middle
South
East
Africa.
or
Yes,
something.
depending on their capacity. Take AirPeace as an example. Have aircraft that can go to Europe and can go to South Africa and already do, and they also can go to the Far East and to the United States. So they are not even looking for equipment. They are not even looking for staff. Give them the flag, they will fly the flag. They carry the flag of Nigeria to those countries. They don't have to be a national carrier.
Yeah.
A national carrier, by definition, is simple. It belongs to the nation. but they can carry our flag.
What is the benefit of a national carrier beyond bragging rights?
Well, beyond bragging rights, that's a critical factor. So it's not, we shouldn't just discount it. We should be able to brag. But the gateway to Nigeria is by air. Nobody comes by sea, and nobody's going to come by road, except maybe from West Africa. Everything comes in here by air. We need it for passenger, we need it for cargo, in and out of the country. So it's a key need, it's a key factor. And there's a multiplier effect in the tourist industry. You don't want to know the amount of people, directly and indirectly, that the airlines employ.
Right.
Captains, co-pilots, cabin crew, ground staff, engineers, catering, service, engineering. It's huge.
Yes.
It's huge. And we should be flying our flag into all countries. That's Nigeria, where we need to be proud, we need to go. And as the minister rightly pointed out, probably the key issue here is this. Every time you buy a ticket on a foreign airline, you've given a job to a foreigner.
Yes.
Now let's work that out. When Ethiopian bring their aircraft here, they bought that plane, they borrowed money to buy it, so they need to service that loan. They are servicing it with your ticket money. Their captains, their co-pilots, their ground staff need to be paid. They are paying it with your ticket money. And while they are doing that, you don't have your captain, you don't have your co-pilot, you don't have your aeroplane. So you are demarketing Nigeria. These are serious issues. By giving a ticket to another carrier, you've paid for their staff in that country.
Not yours.
Not yours. You've given their staff an opportunity to gain employment and to gain experience. Not yours. So when the tomorrow comes, you're not ready to start the race because you're not empowered. This is why I say there are serious issues about Ethiopian Air. And Ethiopia is a brother African country.
Yes.
But are they the best for us? These same people bring their own aircraft to Nigeria to carry the same passengers. So they'll be carrying passengers from two places. And note what the minister said. Nigeria is 200 million people. There's no other one country in Africa with that kind of numbers.
So we have the business.
We have the business. We control the West Coast, we control Central Africa, and we can go all the way to East Africa. The same Ethiopian is buying into Air Rwanda, is buying into Transky, what do they call it, Asky. So the same Ethiopian strategically is gunning for the African skies. And we are allowing them to do this off our back.
Climbing on our
No.
backs. You talked earlier on about the share structure. There, you said it was opaque. What do you know so far about how they've shared the ownership of Nigeria Air?
Well, the Ethiopians own the majority. Then there are 3 or 4 Nigerians that own 49%, I believe, and then the government
Do we
owns
know
5%.
the names of those 4 Nigerians?
We have heard of MRS, and we have heard of SACO. And then the Nigerian Investment Scheme, Social Investment Scheme was mentioned, but it was removed to say few prominent Nigerians.
Those are the words they use, yes.
So let's ask the questions. Who is MRS? Well, in the absence of definition, the MRS I know is Dantata.
Yes.
Who is SACO? SACO used to be Sky Power Handling. They used to be a part of Nigeria Airways. They were spun off from Nigeria Airways, and they've been in oblivion all this time. Maybe doing whatever they were doing.
Cargo.
Yes. But all of a sudden, SACO can come and own a national airline? And who are these few prominent Nigerians? No names. Who? We should know.
What would be the adverse effect of this non-transparency? Us not knowing who these people are, who are these few Nigerians, and who are these and who are these, what would be the ripple effect of that? Are we going to end up like we did with the old Nigeria Airways, no accountability, we don't know what is being made? And
I think it's possible in the business environment to be, what's the word I want to use, obscure about ownership. So for example, if you go and look at the ownership structure of British Airways, they can have some shares for offshore companies.
yes,
And you will see the name of the offshore company, but you won't see the people behind the offshore
company. Okay.
So I can understand the dynamics. But when you give us only 3 people, then I challenge the issues here. And I'm going to say something here.
Yes.
Because I know how we operate in Nigeria, because I know that when the bidding process happened, it was only Ethiopian Air that had a bid. The question now is, Was that not manipulated?
How could only one person have bidded?
If
Yes.
it was engineered for Ethiopian to win this bid singularly, who were the powers behind that Ethiopian that made Ethiopian emerge as the winner? So, could that winner be one of these other three people? Could it? Could it be MRS? Could it be SACO that engineered the win of Ethiopian? Meaning that Nigeria would belong, for the sake of this discussion,
Yes.
to MRS. Because of the lack of transparency, it now brings the game into disrepute. That's very troubling.
Defeating the whole purpose of
Thank
the
you.
thing.
And then issues like, all right, we're going to bring Ethiopian Air in for 5 years. At 5 years, we're going to expand the shares to Mr. and Mrs. Joe Average.
Yes.
You and me. But there's no such knowledge. There's no such information. We don't know how they are going to spread this thing across the board. When you say you are privatizing it for the benefit of Nigerians, I really am challenged. You know, it's troubling. It's troubling that we're giving out such a huge national asset.
And the argument that he made that 95% of airlines operating in Nigeria are non-African, isn't that a minus? That we don't, Africa doesn't have enough involvement in the aviation sector?
Well, let's say 10 airlines come into Nigeria. Let's say, just a figure. We can count them off our fingers. Let's do it together. Air
Kenya.
France, Kenya,
Airways.
Ethiopian, British, Lufthansa, Kenya.
Etihad,
So yes, he will be
Emirates.
right on the 95% by automatic elimination if you count them.
Yes.
Let's then say, let's do it another way. Let's say, which Nigerian airlines are operating? Well, you will call AirTips because they go to West Coast and they go to South Africa and they go to Dubai.
UAE.
But which other airline will you call that goes to any of these places?
Arik?
The Arik, you go to Ghana. So you are challenged. All of a sudden you see we are going,
Yes, we don't know.
we don't have
them.
anybody. So when he says 2 out of 10, I just told you let's use 10. Then I said let's do it another way. 2 out of 10 will definitely give you his figure of 95%. Now I said earlier, each of these 95% buy their aeroplane in foreign exchange and they are paying their bank loans. They have their staff, each of these 95%. They have their operating costs, all paid from by you and me each time we buy that 6 million naira first class ticket he talked about. So, does it add up? Why would you sit in an aircraft for 6 hours and pay 6 million to Europe on a foreign airline? What about yours? If Zaria and all the infrastructure and all the certifications have been put together,
Yes.
there's no reason, absolutely none, why we should not be doing it ourselves. And let's go there. Remember that the same government took over Arik.
Yes.
And they took over Aero using AMCON. So why not inject the money and equip these people and empower them? Why? Why did we take on that load and get nil from it? And yet, we're ready to call the Ethiopians in.
All right, let's talk about the idea of wet leasing of aircraft. The Aviation Roundtable, Gabriel Olo, the led roundtable, said that they were against wet leasing of aircraft. The Honourable Minister disagreed with him. I think you should listen to that, then we take your response on that. The Aviation Safety Roundtable Initiative, I was reading them and they were saying setting up a national carrier with 3 wet leased aircraft is undeserving for Nigeria.
It's impossible in an aviation industry, aviation business, airline business especially, where the profit margin has been proven to be 5% or below when you do it right. For you to borrow from a Nigerian business, from a Nigerian bank, from a Nigerian entrepreneur, to borrow at 23% and make money. And the kind of equipment that you go to lease,
Yes.
before, people will lease 18-year-old aircraft, 19-year-old, 20-year, in the past even 25-year, 30-year-old airplanes.
Bottom of the barrel.
And those of them, those aircraft, madam, they are so inefficient to operate, they're so archaic, they burn more fuel. Some of them burn 4 times more fuel than the newer jets. They are not friendly environment-wise.
Yes.
And you bring them and you want to compete with airlines. If you are doing international airline, If you are Hadi Sirika airline from Nigeria and you go to lease a 777 and you put it 2 or 3 of them on London route or on Qatar route or on Dubai route or even on Ethiopian route, you want to compete with an Ethiopian airline that's an A350, a brand new one that is just 3 or 2 years old, with their own airliner that is 19 years old, that's burning 4 times more fuel, fuel being 40% of your operational cost. How are you going to compete? How? So these are some of the reasons and some of the issues that these airlines do have. They don't have access to capital, there's lack of governance, and all of them, without exception, they are one-man show. It's a money bag who feels, okay, 117 passengers times 30,000 to Kano equals this big money. And these airplanes can be leased at $1 million, he has it. He leases them, he brings them in, he does it. By the time he goes for one C check, and all the money gets popped, then he says, oh my God, wait a minute. Then he makes a rethink. So this lack of governance, this one-man show running of airline, this lack of understanding of the dynamics of airline business by these operators and their unwillingness to come together and form a very strong, vibrant, new, state-of-the-art, high-tech airline to also have access to capital through a leasing arrangement that we are setting up as a government is part of the problems that is bringing this down these airlines, where cousins and uncles and in-laws are owners and operators of the airline, where tickets can be given for free and so on. Okay? So these are the issues, madam, where an entrepreneur will get up. And don't get me wrong, since I came minister, I had not refused one single airline to bring in an aircraft or a route that they want to go to. All of them applied. I've given them Dubai route, I've given them London route, I've given them Guangzhou route, I've given them Beijing route, I've given them India, and everywhere. I've given them 78 to 80 countries to go. Are they going?
What is your thought on this wet leasing thing? Do you agree with the Aviation Roundtable, or you think the minister is right?
All right. Both parties have an argument, good argument. If an aircraft is going to cost you $300 million brand new, how are you going to fund it? I don't want to work it out in Naira, but my brain will spark. But how do you fund it? So the obvious way to do it is wet lease.
What is a wet lease?
A wet lease simply means you go to a supplier, offshore usually, and you say to them, give me an aircraft, and I will pay you so much every month.
Right.
Okay? When you give me that aircraft, you give it to me with technical crew. That is to say the pilots.
Right.
Okay? So it's never going to be mine. I'm just leasing it from you. It's like a hire purchase of a car with a driver.
Right.
That's a wet lease. There's a dry lease. A dry lease means I just give you the aircraft. You put your own crew in it and you fly it. Right. But usually we won't have the crew to put in because we've never flown that type of aircraft before. We've never trained people to fly it. So normally it will be taken by wet lease. Plus, the people leasing you the aircraft would want it to be wet because they want their crew
to be in charge.
Sure, yes. So if you default, they can fly their aircraft out or whatever. Whereas if you put your crew, it may complicate the lease and insurance issues also.
Oh, I get you. So with a wet lease, if I default, they just put a call to the pilots and say it's not paying.
Yeah,
so
turn the aircraft around. Don't
you
land.
come out and the plane is not there anymore.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. So we hope it doesn't get to that. Because of the cost of equipment, because we want to compete with international operators, we are obliged to meet their standard or even exceed their standard. So if they are buying aircraft or if they are flying aircraft that are 3 years old, we need to be flying aircraft that are 3 years old.
Not 8 years old.
Not 15 years or 20 years or, because we're all going for the same customers. Now, there's the argument that it's old doesn't make it bad. But I heard the minister when he says it's old makes it less efficient. There are arguments. Some figures don't pan out.
And they say some old are noisy as well. Some old aircraft are not allowed in some parts of the world. Agreed.
So you need to do your homework. Now, a good example is Asman. They went out and bought an aircraft the other day. I think it was an A340. I may be wrong on that, but I think it was an A340 from Emirates. That's a 4-engine aircraft. There's a time when people fly 2-engine aircraft.
Yes.
For simple logistics, 4 engines will drink more petrol than 2 engines.
And we're talking about cost of aviation fuel.
So Questions are raised why Azman would make such a move. But I don't run Azman. I don't own Azman. He knows what deal he got from them. So sometimes you can get the aircraft at a very cheap rate to compensate for the cost you'll be paying for fuel because it's a bigger engine. You don't know his deal.
Yes.
It just doesn't make sense that you are buying 4 engines when 2 engines are available. But 2 engines are the de facto, and therefore they are expensive.
Yes.
You see, so he probably got a good deal, and it's for him to answer that case. But then you try to fly that kind of aircraft into Europe, and the Europeans will tell you no. I think it is in Israel right now that they have banned the 747 aeroplane.
Yes.
Don't bring it into Israel, and they know why. So is that the aircraft to be going for now? Mr. Minister made another point, and it's a very important point. He said, Nigerian operators don't know how to come together and operate jointly.
Yes, unwillingness to operate, to come together, jettison this one-man approach to aviation.
And because aviation is such an expensive business, they do need to come together. They need to syndicate. They need to maybe not join their airlines together, but come out as one body saying, your aeroplane, my aeroplane, will do London together. London being an example. They can have a deal where they have their individual airlines, but they join together to fight a market. Our people need to do that. And it's a wide problem in the Nigerian sector.
Yes.
And I go on to something else he said, because it's my own thing and your own thing. I know why I entered it, and you know why you entered it. And they may not be the same.
Yes.
So joining together may not be possible, because we have different culture of running our businesses and etc. So I take that point. But what if the Nigerian government, the leasing company they talked about, actually became fully functional and said to some people, we are ready to give you aircraft. We in Nigeria will buy the aircraft and we'll lease it to you to do the London route. Put your syndication together. You might find that more Nigerians who are capable to be modernistic in their approach will come together, band together, and do an airline, because the cost of buying the aircraft has been eliminated. They lease from the Nigerian government. And the collateral that will be in place for that loan will be agreed by the government. So the government is saying, look, we have 10 aircraft sitting there. Some can do Europe, some can do America, some can do West Coast. They are all different aircraft for different jobs. Come lease it. And that takes away the pressure of the money the operators need to find, and it will break the backbone of the single operators, because these modern operators will now have an option. So there are ways of overcoming the limitation, rather than wall fencing and saying they are not coming together. Find an innovative answer around it. It can be done.
Join us again after the break. Right, welcome back. There are 2 points that he raised, the minister raised. I don't want us to run ahead without talking about those 2. Access to capital. He talked about where relations are made officials of an airline. And then he talked about routes. He says he has not refused one request for a route or to bring in an aircraft. He says over 78 routes have been given, but none are operating in a dynamic way. So I suppose, based on the analogy he gave about, why our tickets are more expensive here because we can afford it, do you think that a British Airways, for instance, will bring down the prices if we have a proper airline that's going into Europe? If there's competition, that's where the minister is coming from. Like, if we have options, then we don't have to pay expensive tickets because we can afford.
Okay, so let's just go there. Let's start with the issue of relations when you own an airline. I think we are Nigerians. It's totally normal that you have a business and you employ people close to you.
Yes.
There are many reasons why. Maybe issues of trust, job for the boys, and so on and so forth. Is it right? Is it wrong? No. But it should be done properly. In other words, a round peg for a round hole.
Yes.
If you can get that right, there's no reason to employ.
If your relation has the capacity.
Why not? Why not? On the issue of routes, it's not just Mr. Minister who has to give a route. Having done that, the foreign affairs have a job to do to make the other country reciprocate. And that's the problem we have been having. That's why AirTips is having a big problem in Ivory Coast and has a big problem in South Africa, and recently has had one in Dubai. The other country don't want you to come. Read it and read it right. They don't have your interest.
Okay, so when we are giving them chance to go somewhere, that country, they don't. The airlines there want to monopolize that,
and you can't blame them. So what's the gist? The gist is that if I can come to your country, you can come to my country. Reciprocity.
Yes.
But it's not like I said, just Mr. Minister saying AirTips can go to country Y. That country have to agree. And what they do in some countries is they dissuade you from coming by doing silly things. For example, in Ivory Coast, they can tell you that to land your small aircraft is $10,000 an hour, just to land it. So the minute the landing price is that silly, you need to share that amongst the tickets you sold. All of a sudden, your ticket is overpriced, and then you can't sell. So they are carrying passengers because they are not charging their airlines $10,000, but they are charging you. These are the things, the inside.
These are the hidden details that we don't know about.
And then South Africans can stand up and say, well, we are sick. We can't come to Nigeria right now. And until we get better, we are not coming. So in the meantime, you don't come. Meanwhile, the man has bought an aircraft based on flying that route, based on XYZ coming every month to pay the bank.
Okay, so let me question you on this.
I do have other things to say, but go on, question me.
You know, when the minister, when AirTips applied for 3 slots to the UAE, and then they didn't give AirTips Dubai, they gave them Sharjah, you know, and then the minister reciprocated and stopped Emirates from coming in. They dug in until they realized, you know, he got a lot of calls because, you know, Dubai is attractive to us. But he stood his ground. The president supported him, and until, you know, Emirates was able to do the right thing. So, you know, was that right? That reciprocity, that's what you're saying?
That reciprocity was wrong. Look at the airports in Dubai. Sharjah is not a main airport. Nobody goes to Sharjah. And the disadvantage of going to Sharjah is that you then have to fly again to Dubai or drive.
Yes.
Why? When their own carrier comes, they go direct to Dubai. So it was a disadvantage. It's like telling an airline fly to Benin
instead of Lagos.
Yes. Benin was a good example. But the point being, why? Why? And when you look at those other airlines, they have slots into Abuja, into Kano, into Lagos, and into Port Harcourt. One airline, Ethiopian, for example. Meanwhile, they have only one airport we can go to. So how did that, where is the reciprocity? I'm sorry, maybe I'm struggling with English language, but the reciprocity evades me.
It's not balanced.
No. Now, I gave the example of the South Africans. Same argument. They have COVID, or there are other things they do. They can say, all right, and they've just done it now, I believe, on Ethiopian. They've just done it. To come into Ethiopia now, you need a visa.
Even if it's transit.
You need a visa. And then it takes forever to get a visa, like in the United States. So they block you.
In other words, you know, they're stylishly preventing you from coming.
So they will tell you, oh, there's you come, I come, you go, I go. No, when you go to detail of it, there'll be problems. And now, when the minister then says, I've given 80 routes, and that's where I'm coming to from that example, he can give it on paper. But in practice, to get it to work requires effort. And that's where Mr. President needs to support our airlines. He needs to get up and say, no. If you are coming 10 times, we are going 10 times. It's like that. If you don't want it, leave it. Let me advance. You asked about the price of tickets.
Yes.
Well, I think all of us have some modicum of economic principle. Capacity may drive price. In other words, if there's excess capacity, it will bring down the price. But there's also choice. And in choice, if I was to buy a ticket today from, let's find an airline, let's say ValueJet, who has just started. Just an example, nothing to do with them. I have ValueJet on one hand, I have British Airways on one hand. Chances are I will take British Airways. They are established, they are known, they will go and they will come. So I'll take British Airways. If I was to be going to London and I have Dubai or British Airways and I'm going to London, chances are I would look at London with British Airways. Why? It's a direct flight. I don't need to go somewhere before going somewhere else. So there are dynamics. Even if we start our airline, we need to look at all these issues. And you may get one right and not get one right. Very simply, if a British person was coming to Nigeria, it's very unlikely they would buy Nigerian Airways tickets or Nigeria Air tickets. Very unlikely. Except they do some things we used to do in the olden days, which is like the government officers living out of here, they're obliged to buy the Nigerian Airways tickets.
Mandatory.
Yes, because it's government paying for it. So why should government pay for you to go on a foreign carrier? We understand the dynamics.
Yes.
So no, you go on a Nigerian carrier. And I keep mentioning Nigeria Airways, that's my background. But Nigeria Air, the principle would be the same. Can you force the business? If you do, there are anti-competition laws you need to worry about. So while, yes, you want people to fly on your airline, you want to force them, there are other laws. And the same ICAO and the same, all these other agencies you've been talking about before, will get up and shout.
Yes.
And don't forget that any act you take that British Airways think is derogatory to their interests, they will act. The same as Lufthansa, the same as KLM. If they think you are taking an action that is going to work against their interest, they will sabotage it. Now, just going back one step, we talked about leasing earlier.
Yes.
Let me tell you that Virgin Atlantic started with a leased aircraft, one. So don't let anybody try and confuse us. We can do this. We don't have to do it the textbook way, because the textbook may not apply to us. But like I want to use the word innovative, we can think outside the box. Mr. Minister is right on a lot of things.
Yes.
But there are other ways to get around in the interest of Nigeria and Nigerians.
Going forward, will the progress of this new Nigeria Air be hampered by the history of Nigeria Airways? For instance, have we finished sorting out the pension issues with the old Nigeria Airways? If this new airline comes, will we see, worms crawling out now demanding, you can't go forward with this when you haven't concluded with us?
Okay, so in the early days of Nigeria Airways, when it was shut down, was owing staff in London. I give London as an example.
Right.
One of the first things they did when they were paying people was to pay off all the London staff.
Why?
Exactly that. Because if they tried to start an airline and fly into London, the banks would seize that aircraft if the aircraft belonged to the federal government of Nigeria through Nigeria Airways.
And that's the legal way it's done in aviation.
Yes.
If you're owing, you're flying, they will take your aircraft.
Because it's the thing they can see. They can't come and seize Airways house here because it will be impeded, but they will seize that aircraft or stop it from coming back to Nigeria. They will let it come in and there will be a Ganesha order on it. You can't bring it out. You don't want that. So you need to clear your backbones. Now, I am aware that the unions here are protective of the Nigeria Airways staff, the ex-Nigeria Airways staff, and quite rightly so, because most of them have not been paid in full. Government has made attempts to pay, yes, but they have not been paid in full. The question then arises, how do you start an airline and want to go forward when you have not cleared your background?
The old one.
You need to sort it out. So, multiple issues there. In Nigeria, they may not be able to exercise too much power because the government can simply disband the union, they can disperse the crowd, they can pay the people if it came to that.
Yes.
But in Europe, it will take a different turn. And that's why the 5% of Nigeria is critical. It can't be much more than that, because if it is, then it will be said that that airline is Nigerian government owned. It will take a different dimension.
Okay, so that choice of 5% is deliberate.
It's critical.
Okay, so, and because you're a lawyer, I'm asking you this now. If Nigeria Airways was a government baby and Nigeria Air is going to be a private initiative, if I'm a pensioner from Nigeria Airways, will I have legal backing to sue Nigeria Air, since one is government and one is private? Am I going to be hampered in any way, or will there be options available for me to attack Nigeria Air to try and get my pension?
So first of all, my specialty is immigration law,
right,
not commercial law. Right. But I will talk as a Nigerian. In Nigeria, it may be a difficulty. Is there a law to stop you or to attach or to attack? There will probably be. And there are good enough lawyers in Nigeria to take the two laws, the law of Nigeria and the law of Nigeria, and look at them and see that the key player in this deal is the federal government of Nigeria, even if they own only 5%. But it's their alter ego, their hand is in it deep.
Yes.
And it will take a good lawyer I didn't say the best lawyer.
A good lawyer.
A good lawyer to link it. And if there's a linkage, then as I say, there can be an attack.
And to the point he made that the Buhari administration is really pushing this Nigeria Air Private Sector initiative because, I'm quoting him now, government cannot continue to be involved to fund civil aviation. Those are his words. Government cannot continue to be involved in funding civil aviation. Do you agree?
Yes, I agree. We don't need government to be involved in any business. Like I said earlier,
yes,
we've moved away from the time
yes,
when everything was owned by government. And there was a reason for that. It's historic. We didn't have the money. There was the richness was not amongst the populace. Education and so on and so on and so on.
Yes.
We've moved to now a regime of free markets. And in this free market regime, government cannot continue to fund an airline. But have a look at British Airways. Have a look at Ethiopian. Have a look at South African. And you will see government fingers in there. They can't leave the airline alone. The airline, the kind of money the airlines need, they're not going to get it from you and me. Those guys don't
government.
Yes. So what government needs to do is to create an environment. Create the environment. Focus on creating the environment. The private sector will take over. And you can support them. Like I said, you can support them by having a good leasing company. You with me? You can, a good leasing company. Have it, fund it, buy the aeroplanes, park them.
But if the federal government is the one leasing aeroplanes to people, isn't there a danger again? The point you made earlier on of people owing, nobody wants to pay for tickets in Nigeria Airways. Won't we have airline operators who will say, we're all Nigerians, the things have been hard, there has been COVID, I can't keep up with the payments to the federal government?
So let's go there. We have a federal mortgage bank. They lend money to people who want to buy houses. There's COVID. When you default on your house, what they do? Or what should they do?
Yes.
So we can't give the excuses. We can't live with the excuses. We need to move. He's talking about the Buhari regime focused on. Then the dynamics of making sure that we do it right need to exist. People are now being chased. Banks are being attacked for people who owe money. BVN,
yes,
NIN. Measures have been taken to ensure that you can no longer owe. If you owe, it's an embarrassing time, especially now of social media.
Yes.
They are seizing cars. They are seizing houses right, left, and center.
And they're naming and shaming.
Yes. Yes. And that's a key point, naming and shaming. So if they can do that, why can't they do it in the aviation sector? They can.
Your final word now on this matter, because you've said you agree with the minister on a few things. You've said he's done well in some areas. You have reservations about this Nigeria Air deal. What would it take to change your mind about the deal?
It cannot be Ethiopian Air. It should not be Ethiopian Air. They have nothing to offer us. When you show me an Ethiopian with two heads, you will change my mind.
What other airline would you consider? None, or just it has to be Nigerians?
I think we have the capacity. I think we have the manpower. I think we have the finance. We need to be put together. It needs to be made to work. Are you with me?
Yes.
If we do that work, if we do the work we need to do, we should stop trying to duck. If we do what we need to do, to make people accountable, to make the system accountable, to provide the infrastructure, we can run our own airline. We don't need the Ethiopians or the...
Profitably?
Yes. You know what? First, training in accounting. What is profitability? Profitability to you and me is the difference between what you make and what it costs you to make.
Yes.
But when the accountants take your books and put it together, they can turn that profit into a loss. They do accounting gymnastics.
Creative accounting.
Thank you. I wasn't going to say that, but yes, let's call it creative accounting. So there's a reason why they want it to be a loss, because it reduces your tax obligation. And another accountant will come and take the same books and say, this water you are drinking should not be part of the cost. Remove it. All of a sudden, what was cost will now become additions. And therefore, it can be done to make any airline look profitable. But there's also a social effect. What pride are we not going to gain from arriving in London with a Nigeria Airways aeroplane rather than a British Airways aeroplane? I said earlier, the jobs we are giving out, what pride won't we have when it's a Nigerian that flew an aircraft mod? You are reading these things. You see a captain on Emirates, a woman captain, flying their latest A380, their latest Airbuses. Woman captain. All our pilots are in Rwanda. Why? Why? That is what Nigeria needs. And it's not Ethiopia that will give it to us. And do you know the funny thing? It's not even any other airline that will give it to us. It's us that will give it to us.
Thank you very much, Mr. OMOKHODION, for sharing your thoughts with us, giving us a lot to think about.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. I'm Angela Ajetunmobi.